Let's wrap up our reaction. We're now on the line to ANC Spokesperson Pule Mabe to give us a sense of what the governing party's position is on the easing of restrictions. A very good evening to you, Mr. Mabe, and thank you so much for speaking to us. I know a lot of opposition parties have been saying they've been appealing to government to change its position. We just heard from some of our previous speakers saying that it's an easing of restrictions, but it's almost symbolic that you could well do away with the restrictions. Your thoughts on this?
Evening Tepiso, and evening to your viewers. Of course, we welcome the easing of some of these stringent measures that government had previously imposed, even under alert level 1, allowing gatherings to now take place, albeit with limited numbers, and when people can prove that there is some proof of vaccination or negative COVID testing. What that does is that it also begins to add to our own government VOMA program of encouraging our people to vaccinate, because the message that came out clearly today is that if more and more of our people are vaccinated, we will be able to ultimately get out of this lockdown regulations that we are having to endure. Because the best weapon that we have against this COVID-19 pandemic under the conditions is vaccination. And you would have seen that with the announcement made today, more incentive goes towards those that are vaccinated in terms of how they would be able to gather and meet and all of that, including, the complete ban, the not making masks mandatory outdoors. That was also quite a difficulty as well. I'm sure South Africans will all embrace this pronouncement that was made.
So I go back to the issue that some of our speakers have raised, and that includes a previous speaker, Bishop Mpumlwana, saying that he's rather alarmed that government has decided it must wait until mid-April, particularly for churches they're concerned. And we know that the official opposition wants to put the issue to the test in the courts by saying, instead of making this permanent legislation, why don't you scrap these restrictions and listen to the science and the scientists, and rather have better management of the disease? And I'd like to hear from you, as a governing party, do you believe that it is time to put the disaster management to rest?
We take you from our government because we believe that the pronouncements they make are really informed and guided by science. There's quite a lot of work that the NCCC does. When they arrive at these decisions and ultimately come out to the public to make pronouncements, it's out of what they are seeing, the kind of mutation that they are picking up of the virus, and they say, okay, we think or believe that at this time, this is what we could be able to do. Because an issue such as this doesn't really require us to be only political. It also requires us to be scientific in our own approach. Because if we only take or make political pronouncements that are not guided by science, we could be putting the lives of our citizens at risk. And we are quite comfortable that all the pronouncements that have been made ever since we had this pandemic on our shores have always been guided by science. Now you can see there is a drop in the number of fatalities that we are seeing arising out of COVID cases. Now you know that, okay, if I'm able to increase more numbers of people who are vaccinated, I can then be able to do certain things, including opening up the social space, opening up your churches and all of that. So this is all incumbent or dependent on our people making sure
Can
that
I
in their
ask you a
majority
question
they vaccinate.
on that, Mr. Mabe? As an ordinary South African, you know, Bishop Mpumlwana is saying, in fact, it was Sandile Zungu who was saying there's a double standard that is applied when it comes to stadiums. People are policed. If you look at pubs, for instance, people are not required to show their vaccination certificates. And we know that not everybody applies the law equally. Do you think, and in the spaces that you move, that people are responsible enough to even take these ease restrictions to heart to ensure that should there be another level of a threat in terms of COVID-19, that people can up that behavior in terms of protecting the next person?
If I just share with you our own experience, in all gatherings of the ANC that I would have attended in the recent past, the last one being in the Eastern Cape on the 26th of February, in all those gatherings, we always have got some vaccination stations there. If people want to get their I got my booster shot in the Eastern Cape. But people can also go there and make sure that they use that opportunity. When we went to our own 110th anniversary in Polokwane, we had ensured that we also use that event to put up vaccination stations so that people who are coming from far afield but who are also having access to our own gatherings could also use that opportunity to be able to vaccinate or get their booster shots. And I found that these events of the ANC have been quite helpful. Actually, we always advocate for that in all of our events as part of making sure that we support and aid efforts by our government to push mass vaccination. Of course, correctly so, that where concerns are raised, that there seems to be double standards in terms of how things are being done. My advice is that those that come from organizations, whether it's formations of business people or it's people from faith-based formations as well, should use the consultations that are being undertaken by government, the Department of Health, the work being done by the National Coronavirus Command Council, to be able to then deposit what could be their concern, so that whatever that is ultimately implemented out there is one that actually unites the South African nation. Unfortunately,
we have run out of time. I know I would have gotten you to admit, Mr. Mabe, that there have been some mishaps as well. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Pule Mabe, ANC Spokesperson.